seismic news we heard just an hour or so ago. What Vladimir Putin is calling a partial mobilisation of armed forces. 300,000 soldiers with combat experience will now be deployed in Ukraine. This comes as the Ukrainian army has, of course, made significant inroads in a series of successful counter-offences. Could that advance of the Ukrainians now stutter? Well, I'm delighted to be joined by Tobias Ellwood, the chair of the House of Commons Defence Committee. And Tobias, is this what we were expecting? There had been so much speculation about how Russia would respond. 300,000 troops.
Yes, it's been an incredible few days in Ukraine to see the fantastic efforts of the Ukrainian forces with their counterattack, pushing back the Russians 30 miles towards the border. Putin was going to respond. So this televised address that we've just seen is significant, firstly, in its timing. It's designed to clash with what's going on in New York. You just mentioned Liz Truss addressing the United Nations General Assembly. So this is Putin trying to grab global attention, steal the limelight, to disrupt that UN gathering and underline Russia's claim to be a superpower with influence that the world needs to recognize and acknowledge. It's obvious from the response to Ukraine's formidable counterattack east of Kharkiv that Putin is going to have to respond. He's spoken with President Xi only a few days ago. I'm sure he went through his intentions, and operationally now we're going to see 300,000 troops from Russia enter the theater of operations. That is significant. And then, of course, you have those referenda taking place in the Donbass area, in Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia, for example. This will mean that Russia, Putin, will be able to claim that this is Russian territory, of course, with huge implications for Ukraine and indeed the West if we're seen to participate in any attacks there. So this is all moving up a very dangerous gear indeed, and we need to recognize and work together collectively in what our response will be.
Well, let's first tackle those referendums that we're hearing about. We're not expecting these to be particularly legitimate referendums in any sense of the words, I suppose. We've seen referendums in this country, in Scotland, under the terms organised by Westminster, or across the United Kingdom under the terms of the Lisbon Treaty. All of these referendums that we've seen in this country have been legitimate, free and fair. I suppose referenda that are organised by the Kremlin or their proxies can't be assumed to be in the same vein.
No, I mean, you're right to spell out the differences between the two. But this will be sold to the Russian people, and they won't quibble with it. I mean, many of them may question in some way or another, but essentially they're going to be saying, hang on a minute, if these people in Ukraine want to be part of Russia, we need to then defend them. And that is the power that Putin has over his media messaging, which he's cultivated over the last couple of decades. And that's the prism that we need to understand this. All this talk potentially of Putin being thrown aside or overtaken, thrown out, by the Russian elites in the Kremlin, we don't appreciate just the grasp of power that Putin has actually managed to accumulate and has in stock, if you like. Therefore, what he's doing is an acknowledgement, as you said in introduction, that things have not gone well in Ukraine. But I'm afraid we've turned a very, very dangerous corner indeed. Putin isn't going away anytime soon, and could easily use more intense weapon systems, potentially a tactical nuclear weapon as well. He cannot afford to lose.
It's remarkable, however, that this is a partial mobilisation. Putin very clear to use that qualifier this morning. Not the millions of reserve troops that Russia has access to, but just 300,000. Can we read into that he's potentially worried about public opinion in Russia, that he doesn't want to see normal families have their sons sent off to die, that could imperil his own position?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think he needs to take his nation with him, if you like, in this sense. So he is ratcheting this up. It was called a special operation. It wasn't even seen as a war or as a conflict, but a special operation. So clearly things have ratcheted up there now. But I stress the fact that Putin is now somewhat humiliated on the international stage, and indeed with China as well. But for China, it's a win-win situation, whatever happens in Ukraine, because they need oil and gas, and Russia is happy to provide that. And they have a shared hatred for the West, a disdain for the way America has controlled the international community, the international standards and rules across the world since the Second World War. And they want to exploit it. They want to take advantage of the international rules-based order, and can do better if Russia is actually affecting and starting to irritate things in the Eastern Europe. It's sucking in a lot of energy, a lot of resources, a lot of time for West and particularly Europe, and focusing on what's going on in Ukraine.